we're going to start this meeting, and Mr. Stevens will be here shortly. He's closing up shop. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and I'd like to have a... We got a quorum, by the way, Dave, I think.
Yeah.
So, can I have approval for the agenda? Excuse me, I can't even talk. Motion?
Second.
All right. Amy and then Paris. All those in favor? All right. Those opposed? Carried by pass. Approve the minutes for November the 4th. I'd like to have a motion for those. Everybody read through those, and I think it's pretty good. Amy does a great job.
Thanks.
Motion for it, and go second. So Dave second. So with that, sir.
So it was Marty and Dave just now?
Right, Marty and Dave. On second. On the second thing.
No, I'm just saying, did y'all, you get a vote on it?
Oh, we did, didn't we?
Not
I'm sorry,
that.
excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Can I have a vote for the minutes? Thank you. And all those opposed, okay. All right, excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, without further ado, you're going to meet one of the finest ladies that I've ever met, and what she's going to teach us today. I am so thankful. Yes, Amy, you're my girl too. I'm just and Tara, here's the problem. I got two
I
Taras.
thought you said
One
All
of
right, I got two Taras. I got little Tara and big Tara. No, excuse me, I ain't gonna say that. But anyway,
You never call them.
that's right. But Tara, I've been talking to her numerous times, and I know she's tired of hearing from me.
She was warned.
I'm so thankful we got this meeting tonight, because I wanted our DDA board to start off running. And this is going to give us a wealth of knowledge about what we can do with different businesses coming into town. Without further ado, Tara, it's all yours.
Thank you. So like you said, I'm Tara Bradshaw. I have met some of you, and some of you I've just met tonight, so I appreciate you having me back. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I work with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. We are a state agency that is charged with assisting every city across Georgia with things like community and economic development, housing, all sorts of things. We have about 75 different financial programs that we run throughout the state. That's everything from CDBG money that you may be familiar with. We pay for water and sewer and things like that, and all the way to downtown development loans, which we'll talk about a little bit tonight. I've been with this office for a couple of years. I started in July 2019, and prior to that, I spent 8 years in Dublin, Georgia, and that's where I live now. I call it my home. It's about 3.5 hours south of here. Wound up in Dublin and started working with their downtown development authority there, and had a great opportunity to have a front row seat to a lot of great changes that happened. And one of the things I love about Jasper is that the energy that I'm feeling now from this group that's been reactivated and your elected officials is that same energy that I felt early on in Dublin. I think that's what it takes, is having the right people at the table and those that are willing to take the risks and do what needs to get done to save our downtowns and to grow businesses and jobs and bring in tourists. So tonight, I'm going to do a few things, and I hope that you'll bear with me. And if I get off subject or something you're not really interested in, just stop me, ask questions. This is very informal. Half the time I may not even read what's on the slide because I'm thinking of something else. So please feel free just to interrupt me at any point. So a little bit about our office. We offer services to every community in Georgia to revitalize their downtown. We believe that every community, no matter the size, the population, the different dynamics that are there, we believe that every community is capable of redeveloping their downtown. And I personally believe that redeveloping our downtown is one of the key focuses that we should have in our communities because it builds strength there. Sorry, excuse me. That's okay. Brad, I'm Tara.
Hey, Tara.
You're coming in right on time.
Excellent.
Are also known as the other Tara. I'll be the
Didn't
other
have
Tara
anybody
from
close
now
up
on.
my business, sorry to hold you up there.
Yeah, no, that's no worries. We understand that. So we offer a wide range of services out of our office, everything from education to planning. We work with cities to put in to help them implement local historic districts. any sort of planning activities in terms of downtown. We do some project coaching in our office, meaning that if there's a specific economic development project you need a little help on or figure out how to get started, we come in and get that going for you. We have a network of people that we can call on and refer you to and help you walk through those. Building your organization and facilitation, so if you in the future want to move into strategic planning, work sessions, our office can do that for you. We offer marketing technical assistance. That's a huge part of downtown development, is telling your story, whether it's the history, the small businesses, the things to do, the unique nuances about your town. Marketing is a huge part of that, and storytelling, so we help with that. Building incentive packages from a state resource level and local, and then access to our Main Street network, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. So for us, again, we believe every downtown is capable of revitalization. It's just a matter of the community saying, yes, we're going to invest here. And we see time and time again that private investment follows public investment. And that's why DDA and City Council is so integral to this, because your planning and your smart investment now is what will lead to the private investment in the future. Of course, your downtown is the highest concentration of small businesses. This is your unique identity. There's nowhere, every town in America has a Walmart, right? Or a lot of towns in America have a Walmart, a McDonald's, or whatever restaurant's out on your highway. No other town has what's unique to downtown Jasper, and so it's sort of your calling card to the rest of the world. It's often the site of your largest amount of public investment in terms of infrastructure. It's got the largest scale of sewer, water, natural gas. I don't know if you're a natural gas city. It's usually the densest area of that infrastructure. It's a great yardstick of community support. If you go through a boarded up downtown, most of the times that's a great gauge of how communities feel about their own town, right? If it's all boarded up and closed and nobody's there, it's a pretty good indicator of the economic vitality that's in that community. And then it's a site of our heritage, right? It's where our town started, and it's worth telling those stories. For me, I personally kind of narrow it down to these three things. One, it helps us strengthen the core of our community so that prosperity can ripple out further. It helps us to diversify our economic development strategy. For years and years, and Green will understand this, in the state of Georgia especially, we've talked about Industrial Development Authority, and it's so important, not Industrial Development Authority, it's industrial development, manufacturing jobs. Those jobs and companies are so important, but we all know, and I think everyone will understand, we can't just rely on that. We have to understand that there's a lot of wealth to be built in small businesses, no matter the type. And so it helps us really diversify our strategy and then grow our tax base, which we'll talk a little bit about tonight. And I love talking about that. We love growing our tax base and the assets we have. So we manage the Georgia Main Street program in our office too. We have about, I think, 108 cities that are accredited Main Street communities. That means that they utilize what's called the Main Street approach, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. It's a 4-point approach, and strategic planning and work plans for DDAs or whatever body kind of manages the Main Street program is centered around those 4 points. And I think you'll recognize that everything you do, once you see this, you'll understand everything you do from this point forward of the DDA is going to fall in one of these 4 categories. And a lot of times those categories converge, but these are the 4 points. A little bit about our program. This is the reason I included this. All of our Main Street cities track numbers for us so that we can understand what the impact of downtown development is. One of the things the reasons I include this is right now, for every dollar of public money invested in downtown development, we're seeing $38 return from private. So that's huge. And so it's not, we always hear, the naysayers say, why are we spending this money downtown? And we have to change that conversation. We're not spending the money downtown. We are investing it downtown because we know we can get a $40 return for every tax dollar we put down there. These are our cities. They're all over the state. And then this is the Main Street approach. And whether a city is an accredited Main Street, if you want to be an accredited Main Street, or if it's not for you, there are some some standards that you have to meet to be one, and we have a startup process. But no matter where you are in the journey in terms of downtown development, these 4 points are what we build every work plan on. If we were to come in and facilitate a strategic planning session for you, your entire work plan that you come out of there with will be centered around these 4. A lot of our DDAs will see, they'll have committees that focus on these 4 points. Those are organization. This is really about not just you internally, but who you engage with, who your partners in the community are. But I mean, the city, the development authority, arts organizations, chamber, tourism. This is capacity building, funding your organization. And then design, this is everything from appropriate rehabilitation in downtown, historic preservation, to parks, public spaces. Promotion, I think you have a lot of good promotion going on now. You have your Merchants Association that does some events. You're putting in Christmas decorations, which is great. That is promoting your downtown as a destination, and that's a big part of the Main Street approach. And of course, economic development, which is sort of my area that I play in a lot, is working with DDAs to facilitate public and private partnership on projects. And so I just wanted to throw this out there and help you understand, when I talk about Main Street, I'm not necessarily talking about an entity. I'm talking about the approach that we use to downtown development. So I've got a section in here about, and I wanted to kind of give you feedback about DDAs, what they are, the legal aspects of it. Is this something that we're interested in hearing? Okay. So in 1982, the state of Georgia passed the law, Title 36, Chapter 42, allowing local governments to create downtown development authorities. This was a trickle down nationwide. We saw our downtowns were being left behind for the shopping mall, and with so many automobiles out there, everything became car centric. You could drive to your car out to the shopping areas in town, and they were leaving our downtowns. And so late 1970s, National Main Street was created out of the National Trust, and it started trickling down into the states. Prior to 1982, you could create a downtown development authority, but it was what's called a constitutional one. So you had to go all the way to the General Assembly to create one. The city had to ask permission. You had to do all these other guidelines. This, in 1982, allowed every city in the state to say, we want to create one. There are requirements. You can only have 7 voting members on your DDA. There's qualifications. You have to have 4 of them must have business interests in the district. You can have 1 that's a council person. You can have 1 that lives outside of the county, but they must have a business interest. So all of this is in that law. If you haven't read it, I suggest go and take a look at it. Do a quick Google search. It's on Just Deal Law. It's not a hard read, and I think it'll open your eyes to what you're capable of as a downtown development authority. One of the key components in that law is that a DDA can contract with any government entity for a maximum of 5 years, 50 years, excuse me, not 5. This is really interesting because any other development authority in the state, our industrial development authorities, do not have this ability. So a downtown development authority, you have a small district you work in, but you can work with private investors as well as public entities. So that's a really interesting component. You can take on debt. If you want to purchase a building, your DDAs it's within your purview to go out and borrow to make those projects happen. There's some other things generally covered under the city's liability. You are eligible as a quasi-government entity to apply for state loans and grants, also federal loans and grants. So you have a lot of ability to build funding capacity in that way. You do have to be audited every year, and we have an annual registration through DCA that has to be completed every year, and typically that's done within the city on behalf of the DDA. Interesting thing, the law does not require the DDA, the city to provide funding for DDA, but obviously we see, our most successful DDAs in the state have some sort of regular allocation from their city as support, whether that's used for programming or funding projects or what have you. You are required by law to observe both the Open Meetings and Open Records Acts of Georgia, so you are a government entity. You have to post your notices and agendas, and I think you're all doing that, so I'm preaching to the choir at this point. And there is no requirement by law for you to have paid staff. We do see many of our DDAs that do eventually work towards paid staff just because you get so much going on. It's good to have that one champion that everything's running through, but there isn't a law requiring that. So just to summarize, this is sort of my 3 points. I always tell people, one, you can get involved in public projects. So if there is a public investment coming down the line in a park, in sidewalks, streetscape, whatever it may be, DDAs can guide design, identify specific needs of stakeholders, and then get involved from a funding standpoint too. DDA can act as a developer. You can, there's an adage, y'all probably have heard it, whatever, if the city can't do it, create an authority that can. That is essentially what you are. You are the authority that can do the things that the city cannot in your downtown. You can borrow money, you can buy property, you can dispose of property, you can do lots of different things in that realm. And then also you can get involved in public-private partnerships. You can incentivize development and act as that conduit to move public funding down to private investors. We're good so far? Am I boring you? Is this okay? So one of the things I wanted to do was take a few minutes and talk about Dublin, because I do live there and have worked there a good bit. There's lots of projects we can share from all over the state, and we have a wide network of information that we can share with you. So if there's ever anything specific that comes up, bylaws came up recently. Jack mentioned, hey, we want to look at some examples. I can pull, 110 cities worth of bylaws for you, anything you need. So we have this great network that we can pull from and share projects and kind of give you information. I like using Dublin because I was there and kind of have a more nuanced knowledge of the ins and outs of it. But I want to take you through a couple of projects just to show you what a DDA can do, and then give you an idea. This will also give you an idea of the tools that are at your disposal to get those projects done. All right, so Dublin, Georgia, we've got a population of 16,000. We're in middle Georgia. Since 2007, we've seen over $50 million in public and private investment in our downtown, which is huge for a little old town, let me tell you. It was big, and I'll tell you why it happened. And it is exactly what I said at the top of this. We had an engaged DDA, we had some turnover, and the board was ready to take some risks and get out there and get some projects done. We had a city council that was willing to get behind the vision of DDA and say, yep, this is good, it's in line with what our vision is for the city as a whole, let's get it done. So really we had a ton of political support, and then once we started getting projects rolling, small projects, Christmas decorations, good events, engaged merchants, and then it started rolling into bigger projects like public parks, parking lots, streetscapes, and then from there it went into private investment. Our DDA in Dublin, when I started, we had a $50,000 a year allocation from the city, and over the years, over the next decade, we were able to increase that. The county started contributing to DDA projects, which was huge. I don't know, city and counties, right? I don't know, do we have any county representation here tonight? That, one of the things our city council did, God bless them, they went to the county after a few years of us really starting to drive up the tax base downtown and said, hey, we're doing some things down here, and they, in their negotiations for loss funding and SPLOST funding, went in on behalf of DDA and said, hey, we want you to get some skin in the game. So we eventually had the county involved. We did a lot of corporate sponsor campaigns through the years. We were able to raise a lot of money that way to help fund projects. Hotel motel tax, that was a little bit of an anomaly. We managed Theatre Dublin. We took over management of that and allowed us to use the hotel motel tax for that. And then sales revenue, anything we could sell, we started selling it. Whether it be branded gear or whatever, we figured out a way of sponsorships, what have you. So Dublin DDA's mission was very simple. We didn't have a big vision and mission statement. We wanted to do three things: find new purposes for our old buildings, build beautiful public spaces for the town to gather and to visit downtown, and to attract engaged audiences, get more customers down there to the new businesses. That really summed up everything we did. And if it didn't fall within those three categories, I wouldn't have studied it. Neither was our board. we were all about the buildings, the public spaces, and the people. And that was really remained our focus. And so by using tools at their disposal and being very creative, they were able to do some really cool projects. Now these projects are private investment, but I want to tell you, just to paint you a picture, it's a very holistic approach in Dublin. The Main Street approach, really. We weren't just focusing on the buildings. Simultaneously, we were telling our story. We were engaging with the existing businesses that were there. We were hosting, gosh, probably 15 or 20 different events throughout the year just to get the community in downtown feeling safe and building memories and understanding that there's something there for them to do. And so what that wound up doing is eventually led us to some private investment projects that we were able to work on. Dino's expansion being one of them. So Dino's Italian opened in 2008 in downtown. It was our only nighttime restaurant in downtown for years. There was nothing to do. The sidewalks rolled up at 5 o'clock, and the only place there was to go was Dino's Italian. Still the best Italian restaurant I've ever eaten at. I'll give a little plug for the Shakers. They're fantastic. They were voted the best pizzeria in Georgia back in 2010. So Rob and Jennifer Schaefer, the owners, came to us in 2011 and said, listen, we are outgrowing our footprint. The kitchen is busting at the seams. We think we are ready to expand. We can grow our business. We can hire new people. But we don't have the capacity to fully go out and do it ourselves. Is there anything DDA can do to help us? And we said, yes, let's figure out something we could do. So it just so happened about that time, there was a building next door to Dino's. So the main footprint of Dino's here is to the left. This building came up for sale. Judy's was there for 20 years. It was, I think, built in the early 1920s, and you can see it was covered up by the tin facades. We were talking about this. This is what you call a curtain wall, is what they're called. And it was covered up back in the 70s or 80s because, you know, again, everybody was moving towards the shopping malls. They wanted something modern. And apparently corrugated tin was that way back then. But, yeah, it's all about taste. So, anyways, this building came up for sale. So, all right, well, let's look at it. Let's see what we can do. And so what we did is we talked with the owners and we said, okay, we think we can purchase this building for you. We want to reestablish the facade. The outside of it was very important to us because we wanted to make sure that the outside looked pretty no matter what was behind the front wall. And then we'll white box it and lease it to you, give you a purchase option to come back in 5 years and buy it from us for whatever you've paid the mortgage down to. And so we wound up, we worked for them. And so we removed the metal curtain to reveal the historic facade. We worked with a local architect to just do some very simple renderings. You know, we just moved people. We called up somebody, hey, can you just show us what this possibly can look like? And we re-established the historic storefront. That was priority number one. So then we went in and white boxed the interior. We worked with them to cut 2 doors to lead to the main footprint of the restaurant. And we white boxed it, and they went in and were able to finish it out and expanded their business into it. Wrong way. So let me show you how we did this. We were able to buy the building for $85,000. We had a local bank. Local banks are huge partners for DDAs, right? They typically, especially community banks, they have a little more leeway with what sort of projects they can participate in. And the decisions are made locally, which is a huge benefit. So we had a local bank say they'd give us a loan for 15 years at 3%. So okay, so we had altogether $85,000 for acquisition, $5,000 interest, had an architect, we reestablished the facade, cost about $26,000, and we spent about $50,000 on the interior, putting in the doors and just white boxing, cleaning up. And so we had a total of $170,000 in it. So we told the owners of Dino's, we ran the numbers, and to pay the mortgage, would be just about $1,200. So we said, we'll tell you what, we'll lease it to you for right at what our mortgage payment is. We'll give you a 5-year lease. You cover taxes and insurance. We'll take care of maintenance, structural problems. In the meantime, this is something interesting that happened. They needed to build out the second part of the kitchen. And again, their debt capacity, or they just didn't have the capital, so they needed to take on a little bit more debt to do it. We're able to work with two of our local community banks and create a local revolving loan fund. And so it was up to $20,000 for 10 years at 3%. Both of our community banks said, we'll do it. They agreed on I think at first they started like a $160,000 loan pool, shared participation. They underwrite the loans. We just administered it. We would vet the project in the beginning, send it on to the banks, and they would underwrite it just like they would any other loan. So they wound up having about $200 a month payment for the finishing that they did through that loan. And then we gave them an option to purchase for $180,000 at any time with a reduction on that cost based on what the principal balance was. So at the end of the day, for $1,400 plus taxes and insurance, they were able to, for $1,400 a month plus taxes and insurance, they were able to expand their business and not take on the debt that they were not ready to in the beginning there. So in the end, my clicker, sorry y'all. So in the end, we had a renovated historic property. Our anchor business expanded and hired 6 new people. I think about 3 of those wound up being full-time, 3 were part-time. And then the great thing is after 5 years, it returned the property back to the tax digest at a higher value than it was when it was taken off. So this was our first taste of getting involved in the real estate aspect of downtown development. And I think it was a good, clean project. I mean, the key to this was that we had a tenant, we had a property available. So, you really have to be opportunistic as a DDA, right? And understand that when opportunities come up, sometimes you just got to say yes if all the pieces are there. And so it lined up and we were able to do it and had the bankers on our side to get it done. Any questions about this one?
So, were you chairman, Sarah?
I was executive director. I was
Okay.
paid staff.
Okay. So, did they just come to you, or did this just like when we're sitting around talking, and how did that really occur?
So we, DDA had, like I said, become reactivated and had started really proving itself in the community. They, reinvigorated the farmers market. They started managing every public venue in downtown. So essentially, we kind of naturally became the first stop for anybody coming downtown. They knew to call up either my chairman, they called up, or they found me, or the city knew to send them to us. And so this just so happened we knew the Schaefers, and they came to our staff and said, hey, we need help, what can we do? And then I took it to the board, and it went from there.
So essentially, the DDA had a vision first, they had a mission first, then they started becoming more visible in the community.
Yeah, I mean, so we had a very, very simple vision, right? Those 3 things, we wanted to make sure we had people coming downtown, supporting small businesses, and working with the city to invest in public spaces. Anything within that, we just started doing it. I mean, just any activity we could get involved in. The street project down here, the closing and doing the paint and everything, that's exactly the type of thing we started doing. It just started snowballing from there and building momentum. And so when it came time for them to expand, they knew that that's who they needed to talk to about it, was DDA.
Sarah, I can say this, excuse me for interrupting. I can say, walking up and down the street, I hear it so many times, and I'm sure my board does the same thing. They're really happy with what we're doing. I mean, some of just like the lights, I mean, that was perfect. And even the Stegall Drive was beautiful because we actually did it, and of course some of the council helped us as well. But that's a stepping stone, just like you said, and so they're looking to us for doing more things, and so we just got to keep our eyes open and put our head to the pedal, if you would, and move on forward.
It's always a delicate balance of being both proactive and reactive. If there are opportunities that are there, yes, go ahead and start going down that line, making them a priority, but also understanding that, investors, once you have interest, investors can come out of anywhere, and you just got to be ready to say, yes, we can help, let us figure it out. For me and my board, it always came down to the numbers. If I could figure out some kind of way to make it cash flow, and we didn't have to make money, because we're not in the business of making money, but if I could figure out a way for it to cash flow for the private side, then we can figure out a way to get involved, whether it's go out and take a loan for them in the beginning and do a leasehold, or if it's us try to get the property and then transfer it for tax abatement purposes or whatever it may be. But there was a lot, to highlight that, there was a lot going on. It was a holistic approach. It was not just us sitting around waiting on somebody to come to us. We had activities going on. We had a full body of public events. We had, the farmer's market. We were managing public facilities. We started promoting getting married in downtown. I'd set up a preacher and a wedding anywhere you could. Because those photos, when you think about the power of social media, murals, art, my goal in the beginning was, let's just make it a really good photo op. And if I can get teenagers and families down here taking pictures, then the power of social media will do the rest. They'll say, hey, we got to go see this. And so that was one of those early things. Looking back, hindsight's 20/20. Listen, it was a big old mess in the beginning. But looking back,
Could you repeat that, please?
hindsight's 20/20.
No,
It was a big old mess in the beginning. It always is, because it's a balance, because you've got to have everybody at the table, but that also opens up for everybody's ideas and opinions, right? So for me, for y'all, the most important step right now is for you to really start streamlining what those ideas and opinions are and start acting on the ones that you know you can get done.
Identify them.
Yeah, you gotta identify them first,
Identify
for sure,
them.
yeah.
How much did you guys collaborate with, like, the chamber and the other entities at first?
The chamber was never really a big collaborator with us in our downtown. Now, they were always there, and I always sort of referred people to them, but it's not really in their business model to do economic development. They do business support and promotion, that sort of thing, but it wasn't really their purview to get involved in projects and events and things, our particular chamber. Now, our biggest partner was tourism. And yours may be one and the same. Ours was separate.
Ours is.
Tourism is huge. For me, any town you go to, your biggest tourism asset is your downtown. Plain and simple. If somebody's coming to Jasper, Georgia, where do you want to send them to? You don't tell them to come downtown.
If I can interrupt one quick moment, I just want to make sure y'all, I know you all know this stuff, but I like to remind you of it. The chamber's really just like a year and a half or 2 years ahead of where y'all are. Y'all remember where we started when it was a big old mess in this room and George and Johnny were about to kill each other. And so that reorganization is just, so I know sometimes y'all probably kind of feel like, not necessarily overwhelmed, but how do we do, what do we do? But those are just organizational things that, and as well as they're doing now, they're doing really well. You're just a little bit behind them, and they're ready, willing, and able. Amberly had a different appointment tonight, but she would have been here. They want to not necessarily tell you how to do things, but they want to partner with us and with y'all.
Absolutely. So, your tour. So in Dublin, our tourism council and the director there, like I said, agreed that downtown was our biggest asset and wanted to do anything they could to make it clean, friendly, work with businesses with us to help promote it outside of our community. That was huge for us because that was something we didn't have to worry about. We could start focusing on what was there, and they started telling our story for us. All we had to do was say, yes, do it, and just really opened up those lines of communication. And when I tell you communication, I mean over communication, right? I think everybody would agree with that. The best way to engage community partners that want to help you is to over communicate with them. There should be no secrets, the more that they know, that's the more ability, that's the bigger ability they have to help you tell your story and get visitors down there.
That was a question I had for you, Tara, in this kind of, I don't know, negative time it seems we live in. It's hard to get across to people that don't know about the DDA, and some of us are just learning about it ourselves. But a question in Dublin, I'm sure you had some negativity to deal with. There's always that group like, oh, you're blowing through our tax money, and you have to kind of let them know, hey, we're separate. We're a separate entity. We're trying to just facilitate. We're trying to get government grants from the state or whoever, private money. How's a simple way that maybe you could give us some initial ways to combat that. I mean, all this stuff sounds good and a lot of people will be on board, but there's also those people
Yeah.
that are negative Nancy's from the get-go, and you've got to have something to rebut them a little
Yeah,
bit.
I get it, you know, and the naysayers, the unfortunate part, the naysayers are the loudest, right? They're the
Sure.
ones that show up at city council yelling and screaming about things, and, so for me, again, reframing the conversation about the investment, we're not spending money down here, we're investing. You know, doing a social media campaign about who DDA is and what those dollars look like when they're put into downtown. You know, even small business numbers, you know, for every dollar spent in a small business, you know, 90% of it stays local. That's what DDA is about. We want to support small, local, mom and pop shops because that money is staying here and those business owners will then reinvest. So to answer your question, it takes time. So my first thing is just give us time. Just give me a chance. Don't tell me no yet. And, you know, having the city council and city staff support you and have everybody on the same page about why DDA is here and what you're doing is extremely important. And I'll talk to y'all, the communication from the city about who they are, right now, you are the most effective communicators for this DDA. They are your authority. You created them. They serve at your pleasure. I mean, they're here to revitalize your downtown and do what you cannot do. So, you know, communication coming out of the city needs to put DDA in the spotlight because they can help with that. So, you know, at the time, proof is in the pudding. You know, you start doing more and more projects. And I'll show you a building in a little bit, and I'll tell you, we had a guy, fourth generation landowner, biggest taxpayers in the city of Dublin, large portfolio of property in the city of Dublin and Lawrence County. They held on to property for years and years, would not invest in their property. It didn't make sense for them to do it. I mean, I can't blame them. It didn't make sense to go dump $2 million in a building because nobody was there. You know, I mean, it's a lot. So, but they would always, you know, they would be the ones saying, over here, you see this elm tree? One of them came to me, you need to cut these trees down. They're blocking the view of the buildings from my car. And my answer was, well, we don't want you in your car. We want you out walking our sidewalks and going in those restaurants. And in 100-degree weather in summer, I assure you, you want that elm tree on that sidewalk. But so 10 years later, after I first met that guy, total jerk, didn't understand why we were investing, what we were doing, bought a building, invested $2.3 million, and to this day, if somebody says anything about the trees, he'll say, me and Tara Bradshaw will go to war with you over those trees. You don't mess with those trees, those are her trees, and you want them in the summertime. So, you know, it takes time. It took 10 years for that to happen. And I know that you have buildings in your downtown right now that people are holding on to, and they refuse to sell them. But if you can make it cash flow for them, or you can show that something will work and it's going to take time, it will eventually turn over. It will, every single time. So it's just going to take some time and just a constant, sincere, kind but firm message. I understand, you know, but we're here, we want to see some change, and that's really all you can do.
From a social media perspective, like, did you guys internally put together a campaign, or remember, was there someone on your particular board that managed that, or?
So I largely did that as staff. We use social media to our advantage to the nth degree. I mean, it was infinitely important in engaging the community and what we were doing downtown.
So did y'all create like a Facebook page and things like that?
We created a Facebook page called Downtown Dublin. When I came in, it was called something else, maybe DDA. And I was like, well, we're not really marketing DDA. We want to market the destination. Right? And then just have DDA as the people that manage it. And so we changed the name to Downtown Dublin, and I started posting everything, every board meeting, every fun thing that the board was doing, any projects we were working on. It was complete transparency. That's another part of convincing the naysayers. A lot of times they're naysayers because they don't understand what you're doing. And it's just a matter of education. And when they understand that, yeah, the city's going to spend this money, but we also got Georgia GDOT TAP grant or whatever, you know, to do it with it, DDA was able to go get some private money to support it, I mean, once you start telling that, then they're like, oh, okay, so it's just complete transparency and communication. But yes, if you do not currently use social media, I would say create a committee just to start telling that story.
Is that something that you, and I'm sorry to nitpick the social media to death, but if we can, that's something we can do tonight though. Did it compete with your city's social media pages? Do you have two separate things? We have a City of Jasper and a DDA.
And your city Facebook pages are typically, public announcements.
Right.
Infrastructure jobs that are going on, road closures, job announcements, whatever it may be. DDA is a little bit more rounded, it stretches a little bit. You could do anything from business spotlights to, events coming up to, history, Throwback Thursday. I mean, you've got old historic photos, anything to start getting your town engaged with downtown social media.
And of course, if both of them get the same basic story from two different angles, you just multiplied everything times 2.
Yeah.
I can tell you a picture with your smiling faces on it, on Main Street, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
That was just a great photo.
Yeah.
But there's no competition.
And that sort of fell into place, I mean, and I'm not saying that, when that just fell into place and you got people coming up and walking down the street, and I know everybody up and down the street, it's just amazing when people come in, we love that. My kids love that. They get up there and take a picture of that and send a selfie to their friends, and so, and then I think Kurt said something about maybe it was Green, just Jasper. And so we established that, and so that's the first part of our social media right there. We just got it, and it's just going like crazy.
2 or 3 years ago, I posted a picture on Facebook. I don't remember if it was Ackworth because of Brandon or where it was, but it showed a DDA out in public celebrating one of their successes. And it was 5, obviously, celebrating, smiling faces. And compared to our historical perspective in Jasper of our DDA, which was clandestine meetings held in the middle of the afternoon when nobody else could be here. Again, totally different situation. And Brad, as far as going through the real answer is the truth. Show them what the numbers really are, because ultimately, I mean that little project at Stegall didn't cost the city much at all, and that was a classic example of a private-public thing that came together, and little things like that just build on themselves.
Builds a buzz.
You bring up a good point. People on social media, your engagement on social media will be 10 times what it is if you share a photo of a project versus a photo of people with the project. And that is, people love it. They share it a lot more. Sorry, Kurt, you had something?
So it's interesting when you think of the story Tara shares about Dublin, specifically in the restaurant story, is that, opportunities present themselves every day in our community. Would you say, in your opinion, and these are questions of you, if you had a restaurant looking to expand with an empty facility next door, is that an opportunity that the DDA could approach the business owner?
Absolutely.
All right, good. Well, we have that. Do you believe that public
Well, we
space
have
in downtown, public space in downtown that needs to be, beautified and built out? That's part for DDA. Great, we have that.
Great.
Facade program startup, that's DDA.
Yeah.
We have that. Downtown historic district
We have a
startup, DDA. We have that. You guys have a council, you have an elected body at this city who's supporting you and standing behind you and beside you. I can't be more excited for where we're headed. Everything you're describing, there are nuggets of information in there that apply directly to us. Directly to us. I sat in Carriage House Saturday and asked the owner, when are you going to knock out a doorway next door to that empty building? And I sit tonight listening to a story where that could be reality.
Yeah.
You guys are huge in where Jasper's headed.
So for what I always think about in terms of why you're here and why you're created, I always think about the gap, right? This private restaurant owner, they can go and buy the building and knock the hole out and not need you. Great. But 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a gap that they need filling and some sort of help. And that's where you guys can come in and really play a key role for
They
them.
probably don't even know that's an option. I didn't realize the private connection, even with a few little.
Y'all have a bakery?
And she hadn't even mentioned the revolving loan fund.
Oh, Main Street.
Yeah.
But kind of getting involved a little more directly with the real estate, I hadn't really thought about
Well,
that.
now,
That's the fun part. I love all things downtown, but to get involved and get these buildings reactivated, that is so cool.
I gotta tell you, I know what her next slide's gonna be on coming up. And remember I told y'all, she's been involved in some big, great, big, hairy, complicated, big projects? That's her next slide. And hang on, if you think that restaurant's complicated, hold on, here it comes.
So, I do have, I got probably 15 more minutes of this. Is that okay?
Sorry, we
Is
keep
everybody-
interrupting, we get a little excited.
No, I'm glad you're interrupting. I'm glad. This is great, but I don't want to keep you here and you be tired of
Well,
me
listen.
talking.
We don't want to keep you here in long hours of night. We want you, your
I'm-
enthusiasm, your enthusiasm is
My only
radiating.
plans after this are to go see your Christmas decorations and listen to my podcast on the way home, so
Okay.
we're good.
It's radiating already, I can tell you that right now.
Okay, good, I'm glad to hear it. All right, so, and this is building, I'm telling you this because I'm building to something very important about what we talked about earlier about tax base. So if you'll bear with me, and I'll tell you about just a couple more projects. The next one I want to tell you about is the 1912 First National Bank building. I always look at downtowns and look to see what the big fish are. You have a couple of big fish here in your downtown. I look at them, I think, if we can get that one done, it'll be a catalyst for everything else around it. And every downtown I go to, I can find a big fish. That's the one, right, that you're going to have to throw your Hail Mary on because Lord knows it's probably not going to work financially in the beginning. That was our skyscraper. It's a joke. We call it a skyscraper because it's, but it's only 6 stories tall. But it's our skyscraper. It is the tallest building in Dublin. So it's the First National Bank building. This was built in 1912. This building was built during our agricultural boom. And let me tell you, there was not a cent that was left unspared spent on this building. There was marble, there was granite, there was everything. The whole structure itself is steel and concrete. I mean, it was built in 1912 before we had tons of technology that we have now, and it really is a marvel. In 1918, the boll weevil struck our area in Georgia and wiped out our agricultural industry, and it never regained its stamina. So from then on, it started honestly a slow 80-year decline. There was banks that moved in, there was lawyer's office, dentist's office in and out through the years. First working elevator ever in our city or county. Lots of people remember going to the dentist's office there and having teeth pulled. So lots of memories and nostalgia with this building. In the late 1980s, it was shuttered, and we started calling it, my colleague and I that really helped lead this project, the tallest eyesore. It was known as the tallest building between Macon and Savannah. It was the tallest eyesore. It was awful. It was, I mean, you can see. The structure was good. It was not going anywhere. It was built of steel and concrete. But it was terrible. You can see the bank vaults on the bottom floor, paint peeling, tons of pigeons. One I called Pigeonzilla. I kid you not. It was the size of that emblem back there on the wall. Huge wingspan. I'm like, what is this thing been living next to the nuclear plant? So anyways, it was bad. The back of it was bad too. There was no public infrastructure. There was some movement, I think, in the late 90s to try to save it, and it just didn't work out. So we were trying to move the county there, and county didn't go for it, go figure. But this is what got us, because in about 2013, 2014, we were working so hard to get people engaged in our downtown. We started doing the Dino's project. We had events every weekend. I mean, it was just gangbusters. We were working. And this person, @Hey I Hate You, tweeted this photo. This giant abandoned building that reeks of drugs is probably the most interesting part of Dublin.
Ouch. Boy,
I'm
that's a
telling
sting.
you, I cried over that tweet. I mean, I'm like, really? You didn't bother going a block around the corner and seeing what we've done? It was terrible. I'm probably the only person that it bothered, but it bothered us. So anyways, we knew we had to do something. At the time, we had one of our local attorneys that was serving on our board and helping us, and he really was super smart in this and helped us through this. This thing keeps giving up.
It's gonna stick now forever on the screen.
I know. Don't take a picture of this. I want this tweet to go
It's
away
part of it.
forever. So anyways, we knew we were gonna have to throw the Hail Mary. We were gonna do something. So our board set the vision. They wanted to save this building and return it to its former splendor. And we knew that we had to some way financially make it work for a private developer. That was going to be the only way. Public money can only go so far. We knew it was gonna have to be private. It was gonna have to be a huge investment. So, batteries, don't give up on me now. So, the plan, the people that owned it, at the time, they were out of Gainesville, Georgia. Funny enough, our developer that we wound up doing the project, he's also from Gainesville, Georgia. We were able to get a purchase option from the owner. We said, first of all, let's get it in our control, make sure that, run some numbers on it, see what we can do. If nothing else, we knew we were gonna have to step in and probably buy it. That was gonna be bottom line. If we wound up with just an old dilapidated building on our rolls, that's what we had. So we got a purchase option, made that purchase option transferable. You'll see why in a little bit. And we started running the numbers using historic tax credits and low interest financing. The historic tax credits are a federal and state incentive that are offered in National Register listings. Now, in Jasper, you have some individual buildings that are listed on the National Register, your jail being one of them. So when I saw that, I was like, wait a minute, the jail's on the National Register? So it maybe qualifies for tax credits. But if you create a National Register historic district and lay it over your downtown, every building that qualifies that's over 50 years old and is a contributing historic property would qualify for these tax credits. These tax credits equate 45% of qualified calls back in the form of credits. Low interest financing, we were looking at the Downtown Development Revolving Loan Fund, which is a fund that we manage at DCA, and the Georgia Cities Foundation. It's gap financing. The bank comes in at 50%. Those loans come in at 40%. There's got to be 10% owner equity, 3% money though. It's good, great tool to use. We knew we needed area infrastructure. We had to, if we were going to redevelop the building, probably the sewer lines need to be worked out, the water, the parking, you name it. And then we knew we had to evict the pigeons and invite in the developers. So the first thing we did was went to the city. We started working on it. Hey, we're going to have something down here to support whatever is going here. We don't know what it is yet, but we know we'll need parking. Probably our city has a fiber optic network. We knew that would be a great way to entice something or be an incentive. And then we knew the infrastructure around the area was our oldest infrastructure in the city. So we knew that it was going to need some work to handle that sort of new development. And so the city agreed. They went in, and this was the back of the building, went in and put in, I think this is about 75 parking spaces for us, beautifully landscaped. Replaced the sewer lines and water and upgraded all of that for us and ran the fiber. We essentially became the facilitator. At any given time, we had about 10 plates spinning on this thing. It was unreal. We had the purchase option. What we did is went out and got a historic tax credit consultant. We hired Muriel Batten out of Macon, Georgia. We paid her up front. And got her started on the historic tax credit process. The architect came in from Macon. Our city and our county both were involved in this. This is the first project that the county came in and helped us on. They gave us $50,000. We have a SPLOST referendum where we could use 30% of it on economic development, so they were able to give us a small portion of that to work on this project, very small compared to what our development authority gets. And then our marketer was our mayor at the time, Phil Best. He was traveling all over the state. He was involved with GMA, and we said, hey, he's also a broker by trade. So we said, hey, as you're going around the state, this is the building you need to talk about. And honestly, it helped us in the long run. So what we wound up having was Phil talked to somebody in Milledgeville, Georgia, who knew somebody at Georgia Military College, and it landed on the right ears. And Georgia Military College at that time was expanding like gangbusters. And creating these satellite campuses all over the state. And so they said, okay, we can be the tenant. if you can find the developer. We can't go out and develop it ourselves. And so we wound up on Jim Walters from Gainesville, Georgia, which is another contact that it landed on. And so just by putting that story out there, we had the right people talking about it. There was no, we might do this, we're going to see if this works out. This was the entire board made it publicly known, this will happen. Whatever comes to be, we will make this happen because this is important for our town. And so they did. We kept on working on it. It took us 2 years to get it all together. What we wound up with is a total private investment of $4.2 million. The developer was able to get about $1.2 million back in tax credits. Our local banks wound up financing, those 2 community banks I mentioned, they wound up financing it together through shared participation, and we wound up not having to use the state loans after all, after we did the applications and everything, because they came back and said, we'll do it at 3%, which was huge. So we didn't have to go get the state loans. City contributed about $360,000 to the parking and utilities. It was sitting in an opportunity zone, so they were able to waive permitting and impact fees. And then we took that $50,000 and we went to the developer once he came to the table and said, listen, we'll spend this money up front on the pre-development expenses. We'll pay for the architect, the tax credit consultant, we'll clean out the bottom 2 floors, we'll put in some lighting. If this project works out, and you're able to get the tax credits, all we ask is you reimburse us that $50,000 so we can roll it into the next project. If it doesn't work out, we ask that you reimburse us half. And he agreed. And so we had a development agreement with him that if for some reason it didn't work, the money didn't work out, whatever circumstances happened, he'd pay us back half. For us, it was a win-win because either way, we had a good set of architecture plans, we had the ball rolling on the tax credits, we had done what needed to be done in the pre-development area. But it wound up working. He reimbursed us. We leased the floors to GMC. Top 2 floors are private commercial space. The city agreed to maintain the public parking lot and all the spaces available to students. And then we agreed to help locate tenants for the upper floors. We did the work on the state loans. Again, didn't need them. We filed the property tax abatement forms for the developer. That's another great thing about tax credits is if you get those, you can also go and freeze your property taxes for 8 years. And then we agreed to raise money for scholarships, and we put on a fireworks show and invited the town and just had a great time. The governor came and opened it for us. And it was rehabbed and done. It took us a long time. Opened in September of 2015. A local construction company was used, created 25 jobs, and 280 students are educated now in our downtown through a 2-year college, which is fantastic. And it served as a catalyst. It was one of our big fish. So anyways, it was huge. It also demonstrated that tax credits can work on a small project.
So you said something a minute ago that you went and established this tax credit and you do it for the whole city. And you go over that again.
Historic tax district.
Right.
So historic rehabilitation tax credits. When we talk about historic districts, there's 2 kinds, okay? One is the National Register District.
Right.
It has no regulatory authority. So your old city jail is on the National Register of Historic Places. There's no regulatory authority to that. You can't say, oh, it's on the National Register, so you can't tear it down. It can be torn down tomorrow. There's nothing protecting it. What it does do is allow you to apply for these tax credits, these federal tax incentives. So if you have a building that's in a National Register district or is a single listing, there's 2 ways to be on it, then it qualifies for these historic tax credits and the state credits.
But you said you could do the whole city, right?
You can do your downtown, so it takes, and that would be a city-led project, but yes, you could go in, you would survey every building in your downtown, you work with the Historic Preservation Division, they're housed in DCA now, they're one of our sister departments, and you work with them and you can apply to the National Register to put your downtown on the National Register as a historic district.
Okay.
Once that's approved, then you qualify for these credits.
Right, that's what I was getting at.
So there is a step
And each building has to qualify. If your building where you are is new and it's only 45 years old, then it doesn't qualify.
Right, so it has to be older than 50 years old and it has to be a contributing property. meaning that it has to have, contributing is the word they use. That means that there has to be enough historic fabric there to preserve.
Okay.
So, buildings that have those big curtain walls on them, a lot of times they're not listed as contributing because we don't know what's behind there. So, first step you have to do is take the curtain wall off, figure out if it's contributing, but
How would you quantify that? That would be tough to do.
I think it's 20% of historic fabric. That's why the consultant is so important. That consultant is very important.
But the secret sauce behind the historic tax credits is, let's pretend about our fish that we all know and laughing about at the corner of Spring and Main. And I talked to John Luke and I went over this exact story with him. I said, if you get your hands on that building and want to do something and you run the numbers, as Tara said, and it won't work, it's in the red, if you spend the money it takes to fix it up and it will not cash flow with tenant space, then what are you going to do? Demo it and put something new there? The historic tax credits take that building that's not, the math won't work, and bites off a chunk of it and makes it black and puts it back into the black so it cash flow.
The tax credits
that
are
building
equity.
just like that.
The tax credits are equity. If, and they can, there's lots of more, it's a little bit more complex than what I'm saying, but because there's a little more to it. There's certain types of income you can use them. But the great thing about it is if you can't use them, you can sell them. And syndicated tax credits go from anywhere from 75 to 90 cents on the dollar. So if you sell $1 million worth of tax credits, you got $900,000 cash, it goes back to the bank, bankers love it.
Pure cash, on the spot.
So, great tool. This particular project did not work without the tax credits, but we have some that we've worked without the tax credits that we were able to use the revolving loan funds. That sort of helped fill the gap. The bank couldn't go all in, but our loans came in and the bank we took a second behind the bank. That's the thing the banks love about our loan programs is that we take a second. So they're getting the collateral at the end of the day. So this demonstrated that we can work on, before this, tax credit projects around the state were like $10 million, $50 million. So this proved to us, hey, we can do, the paperwork is the same for a $1 million project as it is a $50 million project. Same paperwork. So anyways, it worked. So I have two more things I want to tell you about before I get to my last thing. So we used that tax credit model, the underwriting and the loan programs, and we copy and pasted it to two more big fish in our downtown. We went over to the Corker building and got it to change hands and the building next door to it. So this is one of our most beautiful buildings in downtown. Gorgeous marble encasings, bay windows, just gorgeous downtown, gorgeous building. In 1960s, JCPenney's completely covered it up. We had no idea what was behind this wall. And so it changed hands. The owner passed away. We were able to get somebody in there to buy it. They eventually actually sold it to somebody else who developed it. First thing we had to do, this building was not a contributing property because we didn't know what was back there. So the first thing we had to do was, we'll pay for the tax credit stuff to get going, but first you're going to have to rip the front of it off and let us see what's behind it. So that was a huge, huge risk. We were lucky. They did a little sampling, pulled it off, they felt good about it, and then they wound up taking the whole thing off. And we discovered that the historic facade was still there. Had a rendering done that showed what it could look like. Coincidentally, same time, we were building a public park next door. So that's what started making this be a little more attractive to developers. We built this park and parking lot. It took us 6 years to plan it, build it out, pay for it. But 11 properties on that one city block, 9 of them went through rehab while it was being built. So it was a good investment. Anyway, so we worked with this owner. I need to hurry up. I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. So what we wound up with, 2 buildings right here side by side were developed together, 7 residential units put upstairs, 3 commercial spaces downstairs. This is my guy, 4th generation, Michael Maffett, Curry Maffett Insurance, my biggest champion now in downtown. And his grandfather sat on our DDA board for years in the 80s and would not let anything happen. Nothing. He refused because if something happens, taxes go up. So anyways, he developed it, put in I want to say it's 2.3 million was the total. He wound up seeing 780,000 tax credits, one historic preservation award. We used local bank financing and the DDRLF for this. Right down that same block, another beautiful building in our downtown, the Henry Building. Gorgeous, had a turret, it's originally the Dublin Banking Company. Another department store trying to look like a shopping mall, ripped all the fabric, historic fabric off of it. And when I say that, I mean like the features that made it historic and unique, took the turret off. This thing had they did put in a wooden escalator, which I thought was really interesting. It disappeared through the years, but they said it was one of the first in the state that had a wooden escalator. I thought it was cool. Anyways, this pink color, Michael Maffett, his granddaddy, Thomas Curry, this is called Thomas Curry Pink. He owned a lot of rental properties, and so when you have to repaint rental properties, you can reuse everything you can, and so spare paint that he had, he would dump them in these big 55-gallon drums, and it would wind up whatever color it would come out, whether it's beige or white or pink or whatever. So he had these huge drums of Thomas Curry Pink that he would paint every building in town. It was horrible. This building sat like this for years. I mean, 2 decades. Anyway, so they came on board, the Curry family, they saw that the tax credits could make it work, came on board, reestablished the turret, redid it. Sits on our corner across from our courthouse. This is going down the block. That's the Corker building right there in the new park, just to kind of orient you. 4 commercial spaces, a co-work space. We underwrote some pre-development expenses for this one. 500,000 in tax credits. 55 new jobs in this building alone. 55 new jobs. And white-collar jobs, like well-paid federal jobs. It's crazy. Anyways, so I showed you those two because I want to talk to you about this. This is I'm going to drive it home here and let you go. This is the most important part of what we do to me, why we redevelop our downtowns. Fundamentally, we're supporting small business, we're engaging the community, but most importantly, we're growing our tax base. And the reason we're doing that and why it's important to do it downtown is because the assets are already there. The building, we don't have to go out and build new buildings. We don't have to run sewer lines and water lines 10 miles out and pay $4 million for a company that might leave in 5 years. The infrastructure is here, so this is why it's so important. All right, I showed you 4 properties tonight. I'm not including the Dino's one in this because I just used the 4 big ones, but Skyscraper, the Henry Building, the Corker Building, and the Kingfisher. These 2 were 2 separate properties that were developed at the same time. These are their assessed values, how they were sitting on the tax roll before anything happened to them. For decades, they're sitting there at this assessed value, probably decreasing. I'm sorry if I'm blocking this.
That's okay.
So of these 4 properties, we were collecting $6,800 in property taxes. After redevelopment, here's their new worth, or their new assessed value, I'm not their worth. Assessed value, $7.1 million. $92,000 for 4 buildings after redevelopment. So let's take that a step further. We're looking at 4 properties. These 4 parcels equal about a ½ acre. So with that ½ acre, so the new assessed value is 7.1. So if you look at it in terms of an acre, we're looking at $92,000 per ½ acre or $185,000 per acre is now the property tax value on redeveloped properties in downtown.
Yeah, that has such a ripple effect too.
It did. They were all catalytic. Every one of the little properties around it started changing hands. Restaurants opened, retailers come in, buildings start leasing for more than they were. I mean, we had buildings leasing for like 30 cents a square foot. I mean, it was nothing. I mean, just anyways. So. $185,000 per acre in taxes. Now, let's look at Walmart. You have a Walmart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got a Walmart. Everybody's got a Walmart. Walmart in Dublin sits on 24 acres of land assessed at $9.4 million. They pay $5,000 per acre in taxes compared to what our renovated properties in downtown are drawing. So, yes, Walmart's important, your highway-oriented businesses are important, your industries are important. But when it comes to density and building your tax base, there is no better opportunity than using those assets that already exist and revitalizing those. And so really, this is what it boils down to for me, 185,000 versus 5,000 acres. So, anyway, just to recap what we used for these projects, and these are all things at your disposal. Again, the historic tax credits, we'd have to work towards that. It would take some time, but they're there. The state ones could be in jeopardy, but the federal ones right now are not going anywhere. They would just, they may actually be enhanced. Local opportunity zones, that's through DCA. It's an ability for you to place a zone in your town where you can offer certain incentives to develop in that area. State and local revolving loan funds, I mentioned those to you. Sales tax revenue, SPLOST was huge for us. That was the way that we got the county involved, was talking about, well, if your sales tax revenue is going up, it's because of what we're doing right here, right? And so the negotiation sort of led to their involvement. Local banks were huge. Having the right team, architects we could call, consultants, contractors. Historic photos played a huge role, because if you're wanting to rehab a building, you have no idea what it looked like back then, the photos are key. So if you have anybody that keeps a catalog of photos, I would definitely start accessing those and put them in a place where they can be shared and open and searched through. It's worth the investment to have them somewhere where they can be accessed. Because a lot of times, just showing that photo to a developer and saying, this is what it looked like, do you think you could redo this? It was a no-brainer. Like, yeah, that's beautiful. I'm not going to spend this much money, I might as well. Anyway, and then also having the right people at the table. And I think that Jasper's got that, which is so important. I thought a little bit about, where you are. I know right now we've talked about you drinking out of a fire hose. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of opportunity for you here. For me, the next steps for this board is about planning. I really think that you have got to spend some time identifying, in whatever ways that you can, identifying those opportunities in your downtown and figuring out a way of who's going to be in charge of developing committees, developing a work plan. First thing is, of course, engaging those stakeholders and your partners. Your city council is engaged. You've heard it straight from them. They're here. They want to be involved. At this point, I think all you've got to do is ask and get some input. And developing a strategic plan is going to be important for you, prioritizing what goals you want to get done. I use the 1, 3, 5, and 10 whenever I facilitate. I always start with, let's think about where we are in 10 years, and then let's figure out how we get there. What are the 1, 3, and 5 to get to that 10? And then, creating that work plan and using this approach, understanding that everything you do is sort of going to fall within these 4 categories, and really focusing on making sure that everything you do revolves around that. So that's all I have. This is my cell phone number for anybody that needs it, my email. You're welcome to call or email anytime. Jack does. You can text me too. Sometimes I answer, sometimes I don't.
She has to turn her phone off.
So one quick point, and that is, this is a really good presentation that you put together. So when you're talking about growing our DDA, then it is either incumbent upon you to put together a presentation or ask Tara, could you send them this?
Yes, this is,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Send us the whole thing.
Yeah, I
Just
can
that
share
section.
this.
But you have to ask.
Down.
Yeah, I'll send out a link. I can share it with Tara and Jack, and y'all share it amongst each other. You can download it, screenshot it, whatever you need. You brought up something important. One of the key points is about educating the community on what you're doing and what you want to accomplish. And I would certainly recommend, once you get to that point and as a group have worked through it and understand what you want to accomplish, go out and start telling that story, right? Do your civic club go-rounds, come to city council, keep them updated. Really start talking about what you want to accomplish in downtown, and not necessarily, it doesn't have to be specifics like we want this guy to sell his building, but more about we want to see buildings redeveloped. We want to find modern uses for these old buildings. We want to get people and businesses in our downtown. We want to attract tourists, and really start to tell that story and help them to understand that you're here as a resource for the community. I'll say this too, the developers that have developed in Dublin, outside of Jim Walters being from Gainesville, Georgia, and that was just a lucky strike, you know, that was just, it fell on his ears, and outside of that, every developer that came and did a building downtown was local. So your investors are here. They have just got to understand that you're here to help and that you have resources that you can assist them with. They're already here. We're not waiting on I keep picking on development authority stuff, I'm sorry. We're not waiting on a German company to come in and bring us 50 jobs. Your guys are here, they're gonna open a restaurant and employ 50 people on your main street. So I'll leave you with that. Is there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Georgia City's Foundation is
Yes.
recruiting LJ and Jasper to join the 22-23 class for
Placemaking.
placemaking.
Mhm.
And there's some concern, legitimately, at our nascent stage here, that whether we should, get in that. Will that improve our focus and improve our engagement in the community? Because we've got DCA and Tara, the fabulous Tara, but you know what I mean? Would placemaking help strengthen us and sharpen us, or would it diffuse us at this point?
I think that, I think it's a really useful tool if your team that you put together for that is engaged. I would make sure that your DDA is sort of the one leading the charge on that. Because it's economic development placemaking, which is all, there's lots of terms that are thrown out. Every decade we get a new word, new urbanism or downtown revitalization. Placemaking is kind of the buzzword right now. It all really boils down to redeveloping your downtown. I always go back to the Main Street approach. It's utilizing those 4 points to really look at your town and develop all of your planning around that. But I think it is. I mean, you put together a team that's not just DDA, it's city staff, it's others in the community. I like it. It's just like anything. It's a commitment on the city. If you don't think that you have a team that would be committed to it and do the work, because it requires work. It requires training. It requires outside work to put together plans. But I do think it could help you go down the road of at least making sure that everybody's on the same vision, that everybody understands what you want to accomplish. I think simultaneously this board separately has got to start working on some strategic planning and put on paper, as simple as just putting it in writing about what you want to accomplish, and then put in writing what you can do for investors downtown and start sharing it through newspaper, through whatever outlet you can get it out there. And coming to city council is always a great public forum to share information. So I think that has to happen simultaneously, but it could be. We can talk about it some more.
So I have to admit that I'm probably the one that brought up the question about the timing, because I feel like what you're doing with this board is going to be essential to teach them how we go forward and what they can do. Whereas with the other organization, I personally think that we might need to put them off for a year. Let's concentrate on what we have now, and also stop some of the potential confusion.
I think that if that's your intuition and it's shared in any capacity, then I would listen to it. 1 year is not going to change. In the grand scheme of things, 1 year is not going to change much.
No.
All of your terms are going to last longer than that. So, so it's 1 year, I agree with you, will not put you off.
We're not saying no, we're just saying later.
Yeah.
This is our job now, and that will become our job later.
Yeah. I think that there's some very useful resources built into that collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're ready, I would definitely move forward in it when you think you're all ready.
Thank you.
So you mentioned you facilitate groups on strategic planning?
We do some facilitation. We also have some groups around the state that we can refer you to if you wanted someone different to come in. We have a couple people that we can say, I think they'd be a good fit for you. And they can come in and facilitate a work session for you, and they'll take you through, really kind of navigate you through. They'll get you to bring all of your ideas to the table, and then they'll go through exercises to help you prioritize them. At the end of it, you have a report in your hand and a plan.
Obviously, there's a
That's what we need,
That's what we need to have, is a workshop between
Can we vote to have you back
just
already?
us. I mean, not that
And
we don't.
facilitate that for us?
Yes, you mentioned a good point. There typically are fees associated with workshops like that because there are some deliverables there that'll be very valuable for you. So, but yeah, we can talk about it and give you some options for sure, if that's, you know, what you think the next step is. I mean, you know, I wouldn't say don't do anything till that happens, right? Keep doing what you're doing, keep meeting, keep engaging, downtown property owners, just keep telling people your story. You're here and you want to get some things done. And I mean, talk with your council and your mayor, and sounds like you have a lot of great support, and that's a big, big part of it.
I tell you, y'all, we're a lot further down the road than I thought we would be at this time as a city, particularly as it relates to the DDA and the reorganization that's occurred. And I know y'all are probably all sitting there thinking, what the heck is coming at us? But we really have a lot more going on that will fall into place more and more the more we do it. Events, the Stegall plant, the lights, all those little things are really, you're doing better than you think you are, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I want to point one thing out to everyone, and that is that we have coming to our city a new business, and that business is going to be one who is a distillery. So now, after a conversation with where that place may be going, that there may be a way for you to work with them.
Yes.
I don't know exactly what that need is going to be, but what you talked about, that missing gap,
Yeah.
then I think that your DDA should reach out to them and find out what their needs are.
Now, is this the same?
Yeah, I started saying, we've already done that.
It's a
Thank
funny story, yeah.
See, this is, all you have to do is just get them together and get out of the way.
That's right, yeah. Yes, so I am aware of what you're talking about. And Jack has met with that person, and we've given them some feedback. And yeah, I absolutely think that.
We don't want to miss that business.
Going forward, yeah, this
Well-
board can get involved.
Does anybody else got any comments? I've got a couple myself, but anybody else want to say anything to Tara or bring anything up?
Just one thing, I'm so curious if it's appropriate. You had mentioned one spot you were eyeballing, just out of curiosity. What was the building?
The one that is on the corner,
Jasper Fitness.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
that's the one
Wait.
that when I'm looking around, I mean, you know,
Just out of
I'm
curiosity.
looking
just
because
wondering.
it's on an anchor, right? It's right on the corners. And in downtown design, we protect our corners. Corners are key.
That's why
Because
one
the
south
rest
is so important.
And I'll tell you, the corner across the street, we've looked at that too. That is so important, that corner is. So whatever happens there, it is crucial that DDA gets some kind of skin in the game to make sure that whatever happens in the future it's appropriate
It's
for
an open
downtown. It's talking about the bank, you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the corner, where the gym is, that building is great. And there's a lot of opportunity there, and the location is good. And it's, you know, it's not a huge footprint, but it can certainly be a catalyst for the rest of that block.
Cool, thanks.
Anybody else?
Workshop.
Workshop?
Workshop,
Okay, we're gonna plan for that.
okay.
And I'll get with you and we'll talk, 2 months or so, or whatever you think.
Sometime in 2022.
Yeah, but, no.
I'm done the rest of this year.
But, okay, so one thing I want us to do, and we were sitting here talking a minute ago, was about getting organized for social media. So I think we've got 3 people here that want to do that. I was just thinking, and I've thought about this, is maybe the DDA do a chamber meeting and tell them what we're thinking about doing, what the DDA is doing now, and present that to them. Now, we need to get our act together before we do that. And I want them, just like you're saying, if you get them and you say, all right, we've done Seagull Drive, we've done lights for Christmas, we've got some other things that we're working on, and get them involved in that. I think it's just like you said, it's fulfilling and making us go forward.
Yeah, I mean, and I think what's important with chambers and tourism is you just gotta find where your missions overlap. You know, their responsibility is to promote small business, well, that's one of your responsibilities. And so somewhere in there, there's an opportunity for you all to partner. You know, chambers, it's hard because I always found it hard, and this is all over the state, chambers have a hard time working with just DDAs on businesses because their membership is much broader than that. But what you can do is find certain ways that they can participate and help promote. The tourism aspect is incredibly important because, and it's the same board, right? Chamber and tourism have their own board or separate?
Yeah, same.
Same. So, you know, that tourism organization is responsible for promoting the assets in this community outside of this community. They can promote it in the community too, but really, I mean, the bread and butter is outside the community and getting that story out there. So just having that conversation about understanding what they do and what they're wanting to accomplish and just saying, we want to fit in there some way. You know, we want to be a partner for you guys and we need you at our table and just starting it there.
And they know that, I mean,
Yeah. But I think, yeah, communicating what you're working on is important.
Two other things I want to point out is we formed 2 committees, and those 2 committees are vibrant and working forward for bylaws, which I'm thankful for you doing that. And then Amy and Marty got together with Green and the mayor about meeting you people that's coming to this area for looking at options of maybe purchasing a piece of property or whatever. We want that in place. And I know they fulfilled that with a great meeting, and I wanted the board to know that they had a great meeting, and there was nothing but big smiles after they come out of that meeting. So we're accomplishing things already.
That's great.
So anyway.
Keep it up.
Anything else? Well, with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay. Second? Second. And wait just a minute, let me see. Okay, so the next meeting, excuse me, can I back up? Can I amend this to this, I'm sorry for backing up here. Yeah, I have to rescind that order, that's correct. So with that, can I vote that we, well, I don't really know if we need to do that. I'll make a motion that we need to come back to the meeting for just a second. Is that, I can't remember.
Your motion didn't
No,
carry.
no,
It didn't
So the motion
carry.
didn't carry. Okay.
Okay, that's right, because we didn't vote on it, that's right. All right, so Tara,
Yes.
we would like to have a meeting or workshop in February, if you've got time.
Okay.
And we'll establish that with you at some point in time in the near future.
Okay.
And also, time-wise, would you rather be at this time, or would you rather be earlier?
Or a workshop.
Well, now when we start talking about workshopping and strategic planning, it takes a good bit of time. I typically would recommend a half day
We got somebody.
or more, just to have time to work through everything.
And would that give you enough time to do what we need to do to get together? Do we need to go into like March, February, March?
I really need to look at my calendar and see,
Okay.
maybe we can discuss that offline, but
Okay.
I think that the board needs to be convenient for you guys, but understand that it could take you away from your business for a few hours. I mean,
Well, that's what I'm
typically
saying.
they're a minimum of 4 to 5 hours.
Okay.
Anything shorter than that is, and we build in lots of breaks and things like that.
So-
And
We're thinking about lunch. Probably.
I would say morning to
Yeah.
lunch
Okay.
or morning
That's
till
what I'm
after
gonna
lunch
ask.
is typically what they are. You get a
Okay.
good fresh start in the morning and work through until 1 or 2 o'clock.
Okay, okay.
And go from there. And we can talk more about how in-depth we want it to be. And,
Okay, and I know you said there's payment involved, and we do have a little money, so we can move to that too.
okay.
Okay? Anybody else want to add to that?
No, just we'll have some discussion, I guess, with Terry, and kind of give a date that we're
Right.
obviously for everybody.
All right, with that, again, now let's, we come back to it. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay?
Second.
Second, okay. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay. great meeting, and thank everybody for being here, and Tara, thank you so much. I knew this
Thank
was-
y'all.
Thanks, Tara.
all for having me.
Thanks for the presentation.
Great job.